bum. They see a lot of willies and fannies every day. As they say, the early bird gets to piss in a room full of people. It's now been a couple of days since 4 people stared into my vagina like it was the 8th wonder of the world. In this vlog, I will be talking about what to expect if you have to go for urodynamics testing. So it is the afternoon before my appointment. My appointment is tomorrow at 8:30 in the morning and it is in Bristol. It's going to take us about 2.5 hours to get there, so we're having to leave I'm going to leave at around 5:30 just so that I've got time to get into the hospital and to find my way around. We've got time to park and time to find the hospital, so I'm just going to get everything ready now for tomorrow. There isn't a huge amount of things that I need, but I like to be prepared. Urodynamics testing is basically, in its simplest terms, a bladder pressure test. It enables them to see how well you can hold on to your urine, how well your bladder can hold, how much it can hold, how long it can hold it for. And they do this by inserting a catheter into your urethra and up into your bladder, which they then pump you full of water, so just normal saline. They pump you full of water, and then basically they do various tests, including things like they test the strength of your flow or stream and they test how much your bladder can hold before it leaks, how much leaks, what sort of things make it leak, and they also insert a tube into your bum and again fill that full of water and see how well you can hold on to it and if it affects your bladder and one affects the other and things like that. So that's basically what the tests are. You go into the room that they're going to do the tests in and they insert the catheters in the tubes, they fill you with water, and then if you sit down to pee, you sit down on what's essentially a toilet. If you stand up to pee, you would stand up like you normally do, and then they get you to wee and they do other tests, and sometimes they'll do x-rays and ultrasounds at the same time just to check everything's anatomically correct. Sometimes they'll insert a cystoscope, so a camera into your bladder. I have talked about cystoscopes before and I will drop that link below so you can familiarise yourself with that should you so wish. And that's basically it. The tests can take around an hour, hour and a half, depending on what kind of test they do and how well your bladder functions initially. So that's basically what it is. So I'm getting ready now. I'm psyching myself up because, as I have briefly mentioned before, this test and going back to Bristol holds a lot of trauma for me. I'm all right at the moment. I've got quite an impressive tension headache and I feel really sick, which is classic signs of anxiety for me. So I spoke to the urology registrar today. That's totally normal. Usually when we're not in the current pandemic situation, you would have your assessment just before you have the test done, but they're trying to limit the amount of time that people are there for, so they do the assessment over the phone at the moment. She asked me some questions about my medical history. She asked me some questions about how I deal with my bladder at the moment. She asked me some questions about my continence, how many infections I've had. Standard questions really that they're going to ask you, so be prepared for them to ask you some pretty intimate questions. They're completely normal. It's obviously completely confidential. They see a lot of willies and fannies every day, so there's nothing to be embarrassed about. So when they're asking you these quite intimate questions, just answer them honestly, because by answering them honestly you're going to get the best help and treatment that you need. So bear that in mind, that they will ask you intimate questions, but don't be embarrassed about it. As I said, they talk about fannies and willies all the time. They see a lot of them. They're not embarrassed. You don't need to be. So yeah, I've answered all the questions. This procedure, they're not gonna put you under any anaesthetic. You get a local anaesthetic where the catheter and the tubes go in, just to provide you with a bit of comfort. But because I already self-catheterize, I know what that feels like. I know it's not painful, so I'm not too concerned about that. You can eat and drink and take your medications and everything as normal. If you take any medications for your bladder, or medications that affect your bladder or your kidneys, they might well have asked you to stop taking them before the tests, because some medications can alter the way you pass urine. For example, I used to take solifenacin, which is supposed to help you to produce less urine. So if you were taking that at the time of the test, it's not going to provide as accurate a test as it would if you're not taking it and it's like what is normal without medication. So they might well ask you to stop taking any medication that affects how your kidneys and your bladder work. So bear that in mind as well. The other advice that they give prior to this treatment is that if you are constipated, they're not going to get as clear a picture as they would if you were not. So if you are constipated, or if you suffer from constipation, it is worth taking whatever laxative you would normally take for that just a few days or a day prior to the tests, just again to give the clearest picture. But this is all advice that they will give you. It's advice that's readily available on the NHS websites. It's readily available in the leaflets that they send out, and it was what the nurse told me on the phone today. So it's all pretty straightforward stuff. It's not painful. It is invasive in the sense that a room full of people are going to look up your vag or stare down the end of your penis. But it's not painful. It's really not. So what am I taking with me? So I've got my bag here, and in this bag, just from past experience, and because I know my own body well and I know how these sorts of tests work, and having been drowned at more than one cystoscopy procedure, I am taking some spare underwear. I will be wearing a dress tomorrow just to make it easier. Hopefully by wearing a dress I won't have to strip off completely. I can just pull the dress up and therefore protect my modesty that little bit more. They usually will give you a hospital gown and blankets and things, so don't worry about that too much. You don't need to take a dressing gown or nightwear or slippers or anything like that with you. Just dress as you normally would. I've got a face mask, and I've got a spare face mask as well, and this is because I have been asked to wear a face mask into the hospital. Again, we're in a pandemic situation. These are unprecedented times, and they're just trying to protect themselves and everyone else. So I have got my mask to wear tomorrow. So what else have I got? I've got my hospital letter that they sent me with the appointment details on. This is just so I know where I'm going, and when I get there I can say, yes, I'm supposed to be here. I've got catheters with me because I always take catheters everywhere. You will know why if you have watched my urology vlog, which again I will link below. I've also got a Lotso to take with me. This is just a mini pocket Lotso. He's just for that added bit of comfort. As I have mentioned before, I suffer from medical related PTSD, and procedures like this I associate with a huge amount of trauma. So anything that I can do to make the experience less stressful for myself is what I'm going to be doing. So that is my Lotso for luck. So that's all I'm taking with me. I don't need to take my medication. I am going to take a repeat prescription with me just in case they ask what meds I'm on, and I can just hand them the prescription just to show them what meds I'm on. That's just, I know what meds I'm on, but this makes it a lot easier. So I feel like I am kind of a ginormous hypocrite because I am telling you that it's not painful and you don't need to worry about it, not to be embarrassed, and that it's all a-okay. Whereas I personally am mortified and traumatised by the prospect of having to have these tests tomorrow. I can remember having these tests as a child, before I had my bladder surgery, and I can remember being sat on what seemed to me at the time a ginormous toilet, like a really, really big toilet, right in the middle of the room, with a room full of nurses, and my mum was there. And I remember there being posters of waterfalls everywhere, because apparently looking at waterfalls makes you need to pee. At the time of the tests when I had them done the first time when I was a child, I was massively incontinent, and for whatever reason they stuck me on that toilet and I would not wee. They could not get me to wee, I just wouldn't go. I couldn't, my body wouldn't let me, I couldn't do it. So they were playing videos of waterfalls and they were running the taps, all in an effort to get me to pee, and it was horrific. And I just remember being in that room as a young girl, and it was just horrendous. The hospital in Bristol that I'm going to, Southmead, has a lot of bad memories for me. That is where I had my bladder surgery. I don't associate that with a good time in my life. So I am quite anxious about the whole thing. I am off now to get myself showered, wash my hair, dry my hair, try to relax a little bit for the rest of the day, and get an early night so that we can be up early to head off to the hospital. So I will see you again in the morning. So it's 10 to 6 on Friday morning and we are on our way to Bristol. I am feeling tired. Neil, how are you feeling?
Right. Yeah, normal day.
Okay. We should be there, I don't know, what, about 8? About 7:45. So hopefully we'll be a bit early so we can find out where we've got to go. My consultant phoned me last night to do again like an assessment. Usually they do it when you get there, but like I said earlier, they are trying to limit the amount of time that you're in the hospital for. So he asked me sort of a lot of questions and things last night. So there we go. Just got to the hospital. We are almost an hour early, but as they say, the early bird gets to piss in a room full of people. The hospital was quite easy to find, wasn't it? Which is good. Obviously we haven't found the department I'm going to yet. That might not be easy to find. I feel really sick. My stomach hurts. I'm very itchy. I don't feel very happy at all at the moment. And Neil's rolling his eyes. I've got my mask on. I don't like the mask. I feel very claustrophobic right now. But I've been asked to wear a mask into the hospital, so that's what I'm going to do. So tests are all done and we are now on our way home. I'm not going to update you or tell you about the tests in the car. I'll do that when I get home, but it was okay. It was really stressful and I've got a really bad headache now from sort of where I've been holding on to the stress for a week now. And as soon as I put my knickers back on, the sort of, I don't know, release of stress caused me to have a headache. So that's great. So yeah, we're going home now. I'm gonna put my pajamas on and sit on the sofa for the rest of the day. So it's now been a couple of days since 4 people stared into my vagina like it was the 8th wonder of the world. I don't think I realised until sort of late Friday and Saturday, and yesterday as well really, how anxious I'd been about the whole thing. I think I'd been holding a lot of tension, so I've not felt great this weekend. I think where I let go of that tension and my adrenaline wore off. So I've been really headachy and just my head's felt really fuzzy, like it's full of nothing. So yeah, it's been a bit tough. But anyway, the procedure. So we arrived at the hospital just after 8, and by the time we'd walked down to gate 36 at Southmead Hospital in Bristol, which is where the Urodynamics department is, it was about 10 past, 8:15. It was a long way and I don't walk fast. I checked in. The waiting room had chairs taped off so that you could sort of observe social distancing while sat in the waiting rooms. That was quite good. The reception desks had tables in front of them so you couldn't stand too close to the receptionists, so that was really good. And so we sat in a chair and waited, and then just about 8:30 two of the nurses came and got me. They both had face masks on. They told me that they were implementing a one-way system, so you had to walk the long way around to the room where I was going to have the procedure done. So we started walking around, and then a nurse with a trolley full of hand wash appeared. She complimented me on my dress, and they squirted a load of the alcohol gel into my hands, so I washed my hands and sort of wrists and everything. They then took my temperature, which was 37.2, which is a little bit high. So they asked if I was feeling unwell or anything like that. I explained that I was quite stressed and I run quite hot anyway, so they were fine with that. That was fine. And then we carried on walking around, where I met my consultant again. Obviously we did not shake hands, and he introduced me to all of the people in the room. He then left and I was left with I was left with one nurse, sorry, who explained that I needed to get into a gown, strip everything off. So I was allowed to leave my bra on, but my dress had to come off, my underwear, and I had to take my shoes off as well because it was just easier for the bed. In that room there was sort of all the equipment they were going to need. There's an x-ray machine in there. Yeah, so it's all set up and ready to go. The couch thing is one of those super clever foldy ones, so that it's got stirrups on it as well. If you've ever had a smear test or a baby, you will know what stirrups are. Anything gynecological, you will know what stirrups are. They're not nice. And that sort of all folds up and down into different positions so they can get you into the positions you need to be for the procedure. So they also asked me to, once I was undressed, to have a wee. Like the couch has a gap in the middle of it, almost like a toilet, which had a funnel which goes down into a jug, and they asked me if I could do a wee first into there. I explained that I could only do that by self-catheterising, and they then said, well, don't bother, we'll do that when we're ready to start and we'll take a sample at the same time. So the only reason they ask you to do a wee first off is so that they can take a sample of it. So before they insert or do any test or do anything to you at all, they test your urine just to make sure you haven't got an infection. If you've got an infection, chances are very likely that you won't have the tests done at all that day. So they skipped that part. I got onto the bed, I lay flat. I then assumed the position, and again, if you ever had a smear test or anything gynecological done, you'll know what the position is. And then 4 people looked into my lady garden whilst the consultant catheterised me, which was fine. It's obviously, I do it every day, so it's a sensation I'm completely used to. It didn't really feel weird to me. What did feel weird was when I had to lie on my side and have a tube inserted into my back passage, as they kept referring to it. So They also pop the tube into your back passage so that they can test the pressures in your bowel and your stomach to see if they affect the pressures in your bladder. So that's why they do that, for sort of no other reason. It's a really thin tube, and honestly, you won't, other than the sort of uncomfortableness of it going in initially, it's not uncomfortable, it's not painful, it's just embarrassing. So once they'd popped all the tubes in, they emptied my bladder completely of any urine that was in it. They tested it and it was clear, because I'd been asked to start my rescue pack of antibiotics just to make sure I was sort of infection free, which I had done, and which I was. That was good news. So once that's all in, they pop a little sheet over you just to protect your modesty, and then they start the test. So basically they use the 2 tubes that they've inserted to fill you up with water. They then can test the pressure within your bladder whilst they do this. So I was asked to strain as if I was going to have, like, to force a wee. This isn't sort of a mechanism my body can do because of my disability, so I was asked to pretend I was blowing up a balloon, which is a technique I've used many times, because sometimes I have difficulty self-catheterizing, and I was taught, when I was first taught how to do it, that if you mimic blowing up a balloon, that is the same effect on your body as if you are trying to push a wee out. So there's my top tip for you. They usually would get you to cough, but at the moment they're not encouraging coughs because of the pandemic, so it was the blowing up a balloon motion. So I did that for about 10-20 minutes while they tested the various pressures inside me. Once that was done, they then emptied my bladder again and put me into an upright position. So basically the back of the table comes up and you're sat upright as if you were sat on the toilet. So sort of underneath you is the tube and the funnel, which you don't really need because there's a catheter in. But this was all then, the tubes are then connected to like a special dye that they use so that it shows up on an x-ray, and they started putting the dye into my bladder, and an x-ray machine was moved around me. So I'm sat here and the x-ray machine, it goes like this around you so they can see your bladder. They made sure I was comfortable, which was really nice. I was all covered up with like sort of gowns and blankets, so that was fine. And then they connect everything up, and then you can see your bladder on the screen, which is really cool. So with the dye inside my bladder, I was able to see what my bladder looks like, and interestingly how the clam cystoplasty that I had in the past works, and it is really, really clever. So they do some more pressure tests at this point. Again, they get you to strain as if you're going to do a wee. I was asked to do some small coughs because my strain is not good enough, so I was asked to do some small coughs. They then proceeded to fill up my bladder. So once my bladder looked full on the screen, they asked me if I felt like they could fill it up anymore, which they did. During all this time, they're trying to mimic what happens and at what point you have an accident, so at what point you leak. It's all that kind of testing. So the whole point of the test is to leak. So if you do feel like you're leaking, which you're not because you've got a catheter in, but if you do feel like you're leaking, that's what they're looking for. So embrace that and don't try to hold it in, is my advice, because there's no need for you to. They're testing how much stress your bladder can handle. So basically they're stress tests for your bladder, and my bladder does not deal with stress well, let me tell you. So that was it basically. Once they were happy that they'd got all the images they needed from the x-rays, they then took the catheter out, and they took the tube in my back passage out, and I was asked to self-catheterize. You would be asked, if you don't self-catheterize, you would just be asked to wee normally into sort of, again, like I said, the couch becomes like a toilet almost, so you're asked to wee into that basically. I obviously can't do that, so I was asked to self-catheterize into it. Everyone left the room, so I could do that. Once I had done that, I was allowed to get dressed again, and then I waited for the consultant to come and talk me through the results, which he did. But that the results are for another time, not really gonna sort of talk about that now. I will say that there was something wrong. They did find things that should not be happening, and it's a really weird reaction to have, but I am so relieved, because I thought that if I went there and they didn't find anything wrong with my bladder and my kidneys and things, I would have just been sent home in the same position that I'm in now. So constant infections, constant pain, accidents all the time, occasionally unable to pee at all, even with a catheter, so just difficulties all the time. I was really afraid that I was just going to be sent home to live with that. So I am so relieved that they found something, because finding something means they can fix something. So that's great. So now I am just waiting to hear from the urology department to see what my next steps are going to be. So all in all, the tests were uncomfortable because they're embarrassing. It's not nice to sort of be naked from the waist down in a room full of people whilst they poke and prod you and have a good old look around. But it was not in any way, shape or form painful. So the tests, they're not painful tests, they're really not, I promise. And these people have seen, they've seen it all. They've seen a lot of genitalia, so don't be embarrassed. I know that's easier said than done, but they're totally used to it. And they were, the 4 people that I had, so my consultant and 3 nurses, were all so nice. They really put me at ease. I'd let them know beforehand that I suffer from PTSD, but they were all really nice. They put me at ease. They explained every single thing that they were going to do and why they were doing it. And they talked me through everything, which was really good and really helpful. They made sure I was comfortable, and they made it really clear that I could stop at any point I wanted to. So if I was unhappy, if I was uncomfortable, if I was upset, if I was in pain, they made it very clear that I could stop at any point, which was really nice. So yeah, that is what to expect from a urodynamics test. 9 times out of 10, they can give you a result or a diagnosis sort of on the spot, because they can see everything that's happening on those screens. So they can see from the pressure test, they can see from the x-rays, everything that is going on. So they can sort of really give you a diagnosis or a treatment plan instantaneously, which is really, really helpful. I am unusual, as you might have guessed. So they wanted to go away and look at the test results, and they wanted to meet and have an MDT, which is a multidisciplinary team meeting, about my results to sort of decide the plan going forward. I have an inkling of what those plans will be because it was discussed with me, but they just want, I think they want more eyes on it, because I do have a very complicated internal setup. Things aren't straightforward for me, so they want to sort of discuss it further. But generally, you will get your results straight away, which is really good peace of mind. There's no waiting around worrying about it, so that's really good. All in all, whilst yes, it can be embarrassing and uncomfortable, it's not painful. It's really nothing to worry about. Which makes me kind of a hypocrite, because I did nothing but worry about it for a week, to the point where I made myself quite poorly. But I promise that it will be fine. You will be absolutely fine if you have these tests done, and they're so worthwhile because it can help you really get to the bottom of why you might be having accidents or why your bladder might be leaking. And a huge percentage of people will have bladder weakness, will have bladder incontinence, and these sorts of tests can pinpoint why that might be and can give you a really good treatment plan. So if you're offered these tests, or if you feel you need these tests, then definitely have them. So that is it really. If you've got any questions about urodynamics testing, or any questions about my disability, I suppose, as always, get in touch below. Love to hear from you. If you like this video, then don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will be back soon with another video. Thank you as always for watching.